Hey everyone, this is a continuation of the interview that we did with Arben Malaj, who is Gerta's father. We first interviewed him a couple months ago about his experience as the Minister of Finance of Albania and his career throughout public life and the negotiations lessons from that. This was one of the most popular episodes. We also got the most feedback about our newsletter. Gerta's parents, Arben and Monda, her mother, are visiting us in San Francisco. So Arben was kind enough to take some time to sit down with us again and to chat more about his experience, career, and the lessons that he took away on negotiations and power throughout his professional life.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
We are back interviewing a famous Albanian figure, Arben Malaj, who happens to be my dad as well.
For those who are watching on video, I think this is the nicest we have dressed because
Yes.
Arben is famous for always being very, very sharp in public on his TV appearances.
At the beach.
Yeah.
The most overdressed person everywhere.
So we had to dig into our closet to make sure that we were able to match Arben's fashion here.
Yeah, because my idea is that the dress code is power.
Yeah,
The dress is power. Yeah.
Especially in Europe and especially in East Europe.
In Europe. Yeah, growing up, my dad would always say, the way you dress is power. And we are on Gentle Power, the podcast. And so we think about power a lot here and talk about power. So actually, why do you think the way you dress is power? What does it mean to you?
In our tradition, when you are working in public position and in financial institutions like here, you need to have a good dress, which is respect not just for yourself, for the people who are believed to you.
Okay, so you see the way you dress as being respectful to the people you serve, the people you work with. But how do you think about the way you dress versus judging a book by its cover? Isn't dressing a certain way just trying to make the book look better than the content?
Yeah, different company through different strategy of marketing have the focus in the covers. Does it not necessary to be sure this book is good? You need to go deeply.
Yeah.
But the first perception is based in some psychological researches.
Yeah.
7% of perception about you came from the first contact.
7 or 70?
70.
70, 70% of someone's perception of you is based on your first impression.
First impression.
Yeah, so my dad is saying that if you think about marketing and if you think about first impressions, and a lot of psychology studies, they show that first impression and the way you present something is important. I think what you're saying is people will judge a book by its cover, so have a good cover.
Is the first step to have the good negotiation or good cooperation.
Okay.
But as you know, for example, the biggest consulting company, as I saw it in San Francisco, continue to have this kind of dress.
Outfits, yes. Yeah. Which ones? Or you mean the main ones?
JP Morgan.
JP Morgan.
JP Morgan company, which are located to Salesforce.
Yes, yes.
When you walk there, you see the people. Doesn't matter, it's very high temperature.
Yeah.
Wow.
So my parents are visiting San Francisco. They actually leave today. And we live near the financial district. And my dad is saying as he walks around, he sees different banks and consulting companies. And even when it's a hot day, the workers there are dressed very formally. And so he says that shows the importance of how you present yourself.
They have very good expertise. Why they need to do this for their employees?
Yes, yes.
So I know we jumped right into it, but just to back up, because there might be some people who didn't see our first podcast episode series. It was a two-parter that we did sometime last summer, was it? And so just
I think it was in the winter.
Oh, it was in the winter.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
feels
Oh
a
my
lot-
gosh. Yeah, it was just a couple
We were
months
sick,
ago.
That's why it wasn't
Yeah.
recorded.
Yeah.
Can I just say I'm representing MIT with my cup because I'm sitting in between two Harvard men, so I need to really make sure MIT is well represented. I also have two MIT, memorabilia up there.
Yeah, we have
MIT
you out.
crowd, I got you.
We have you outnumbered right now. So
Exactly. They say you marry your father. I didn't realize I married a husband just like my father until you went to the exact same school.
But you should know that MIT is just for engineering and science. But social issue will be more important than just knowledge
Yeah.
in engineering. We are happy to be alumni of Harvard Kennedy School, which first one about art and science and special focus in soft skills, which are more important here than before.
That it is true that soft skills are getting more and more important now in the age of AI, where a lot of the hard skills are being covered by AI. Man, let's just move forward. Move past
Be
that.
careful
I'll
about-
defend this later.
But be careful about competition between us.
Yes, I am outnumbered, but yes.
But for those who didn't catch our interview with Arben when Gerta and I were in Albania a couple months ago, not years ago, apparently. So we had Arben on our podcast because he has a lifetime and more of incredible experience throughout his career around negotiations and power. For context, Arben is a renowned economist, and in the 90s, he was selected to be the Minister of Finance of Albania and to shepherd the Albanian economy out of incredible economic turmoil that led to civil unrest, and it was
Civil war.
a civil war in Albania. But essentially what happened was after a communist system ended in Albania and it opened up to the world after about half a century of a very repressive regime, and Albania was cut off from the world. No one was allowed to go in and out. It was an incredibly repressive place to live. I think I was reading an article about how essentially it was similar to North Korea in Albania in terms of it was hard to come in and out.
Yes.
There were lots of rules, and it was a tough time. But after communism fell, Albania opened up to the world, and there were lots of financial instruments that started popping up in Albania, including these very high interest yield accounts or these investments that turned out to be Ponzi schemes. And essentially overnight, the country lost more than 50% of its GDP. And it led to civil unrest. There was fighting in the streets. It was essentially like a civil war. This is what you grew up in.
Yes.
Arben at the time was a very young member of parliament, and he was selected by the prime minister to become the Minister of Finance.
Quick correction. I believe his professors supported him to become prime minister. From where? What were you right before they asked you to become prime minister?
Yeah, as Alex mentioned, the size of pyramid schemes achieved 50%.
50?
50.
50%.
And of GDP.
Of GDP was sort of the money circulation
We-
related to the
yeah.
Ponzi schemes?
And what was very dangerous, about 1.6 million of our population.
1.6 million of the Albanian population, which
which-
at the
which-
time was almost, I think, 2.5 million.
Which is about 60% of our population, lose their money in pyramid schemes.
Wow.
In this context, based in two indicators, the size of the GDP of pyramid schemes and the size of population who invested in pyramid scheme, for long term, Albania case will be the worst example in the world,
In the world for Ponzi
compared
schemes.
with centuries of history of euphoric finances.
Wow. And is that because we're a small country, so per capita, it was really bad?
Many factors.
Many factors.
Many
So,
factors.
very quickly, where were you when they proposed that you become prime minister? What were you doing?
When our country was in this risk for civil war, but fortunately we didn't go in civil war, just in civil conflict. All political parties discuss how to handle this issue, And the good proposal is that the majority lost credibility to continue as majority. Opposition will not be just winner because the clashes between groups
Yes.
will be a risk for Albania. In this context, all parties propose to have the government of unity of Albanians,
Government of Unity of Albania.
included ministers for all parties. I was working for EU projects. I was a part-time teaching professor in economic faculty of Tirana, and just months ago I created my consulting company. During the negotiation,
With whom?
between all parties, but the focus was former President Berisha and the General Secretary of Socialist Party, Professor Recep Mejdani, which is academic profile. And we discussed in the Socialist Party, and during negotiation, one of my colleagues proposed to Berisha, Malaj will be one candidate to handle this situation.
Let me interrupt you very quickly. Okay, so let's rewind. So Albania comes out of communism. It was a very closed off country. I actually remember hearing stories where if your radio picked up Italian music, and we live, basically Albania is across the water from Italy. So we consider them neighbors across the water. So if your radio would pick up Italian music and you were listening to it, you could go to jail. That's how bad communism was at the time. Or if you read foreign books, or if you wore pants that were slightly different from everyone else's, it was like, oh, you're trying to be different and, you're misaligned with our values. So Albania comes out of communism, and then new cultures and new stuff is introduced to the country, including various financial tools and projects. And so Ponzi schemes start popping up. And what my dad was just saying is that 60% of the population of Albania invested in Ponzi schemes, right? Invested
Yes.
or lost their money? Invested.
When
Eventually
when
lost.
they fell,
Yeah, when they fell, they lost.
They lost their savings.
Yeah.
And that's just thinking about that is
That's
wild,
wild.
because imagine more than half of your country losing all of their money overnight.
And when you think of 60% of a population, imagine there's also kids and there's very elderly people, and so 60% is essentially the entire population.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
if you factor in very young and very old people, then it's essentially all adults.
I would like to clarify something.
Yes.
The losses from company was 50% of GDP, but losses for investors was about 80%. This is a report for every pyramid schemes.
Yes.
Only about 20% will be winner.
So 60% of the population put their money in Ponzi schemes. That money flow in and out was at the time 50% of the GDP, which is wild. And of those 60%, 80% lost their money. Only 20% were the winners. Obviously, because of course at the beginning there's some winners just to entice you. And then
88 to 12%.
88 of those 60%, 88 of the people who invested in Ponzi schemes lost their money. Essentially, pretty much almost everyone.
This report came from different researches for different pyramid schemes in the economic history.
Yeah, this was probably the worst sort of
Financial
crisis due to euphoria of people investing money in interesting money schemes.
Yeah.
So
Interesting being a very generous word there.
So at the time, I think my dad were you 30, 31 years old in 1997?
36.
36, okay. So at the time, my dad was part-time teaching as a professor at university, and then part-time doing consulting gigs.
In 96,
1996.
because crisis happened in 1997, I had been 3 months in the U.S., the first visit here. It was a special program for Department of Trade about the strategy of how to support small and middle enterprises.
Yeah.
All East Europe in 1989, when
The Berlin Wall fell.
Berlin Wall
Out.
fell.
all Eastern European countries need to start their transition from socialism to democracy, from centralized economy to liberal economy. But what was very interesting for me as a researcher was that except Albania, every country have the roots of private sector.
They had roots in private sector. But Albania had no roots,
No,
so they had
because-
to train you.
Because our constitution during the communist system punish any kind of private property and private activities. And the conclusion from some researchers was that others have experiences to start. Albania need to create the model because we are something special in our history. We go from socialism to capitalism.
Yes, with no roots, no
We never had feudalism as a part of our
feudalism.
Economy.
How do you say it?
Okay. Yeah, feudalism?
Feudalism.
Yeah.
feudalism.
So who sent you to be trained in the U.S. for how to help small and medium businesses?
Was a competition process.
Okay.
Yeah.
But who was sponsoring it?
State Department.
The government. Okay.
American government
Oh, okay.
finance for us.
Nice. So basically what he's saying is that in 1996, this was before the collapse of the Ponzi schemes. The American government, together with the Albanian government, there was some sort of competition. Whoever would win, they would send them to the U.S. to get trained on how to support small and medium-sized enterprises, on basically how to grow in a more of a capitalistic society. And this was especially important for Albania because every other country had had some sort of capitalistic roots, but Albania had eradicated those concepts or experiences during communism, which lasted for around 50 years. And so that's why no one had any experience how to navigate that world.
So Albania was the only country out of those coming out of communism in Eastern and Southern Europe that had zero precedent on any free market or
Yeah,
private
or
enterprise
experiences, yeah.
experience. Every other country had some element to
Yes.
that, but Albania was the most, everything was fully centralized, fully
For this
nationalized, owned by the
reason,
public.
Some people like you compare Albania with North
Korea.
Yeah.
Alex Korean.
Yes.
So cool. So it's 1996. You do a 3-month program in the U.S. how to help small and medium enterprises on how to navigate a more capitalistic society. And then the Ponzi schemes are starting to collapse in 1997. My dad is around 36 years old. Now there were several political parties. During communism, there was only one, obviously, but in 1997, all the political parties come together, including the president at the time, Berisha, and the head of the Socialist Party, which is the equivalent of the Democratic Party in the U.S. Berisha is the equivalent of the Republican Party.
Yes.
So he was in power, the equivalent of the Republican Party here in the U.S. The equivalent was in power in Albania. And they all come together and they say the Ponzi schemes are collapsing. We need to put together a government that has people from any type of ideology, as long as they're experts, I assume. And they were proposing that my dad become prime minister. However, as I recall, the president was very difficult to work with, and my dad said, I cannot work under him. I will not join the government. At the time, again, he was part-time professor, part-time, had his own consulting firm, little office. The one people picturing like a
You was
Albanian
individual
McKinsey.
business.
Individual, yes, just
Individual
you as
business.
the head consultant. But then your college roommate and good friend Bashkim Fino, they went to him and they're like, do you want to become prime minister? And he made it conditional that he was only going to become prime minister if my dad was going to become minister of finance.
Because we had been roommate in university for 4 years.
And
And we
he
know each
trusted
other,
you.
Yeah.
and we
They
trust
trust
each
each other's expertise. And so my dad has already said no. There's a moment where he's already said no to becoming prime minister. He just goes back to doing his own thing. And then there's a knock on the door one day and they're like, congratulations, you've become minister of finance. He's like, I already said no. And they're like, well, we made Bashkim Fina, your college roommate, prime minister. And he made it conditional that he'll only do it if you become minister of finance. My college roommate was Alex's sister. That's how we met. So, when is your sister going to make me minister of finance?
You know, she is a lawyer, so she could at least make sure that on paper everything is good to go.
Or maybe she's waiting for me to make her something. Awesome.
And so all of this happened
but
after the Ponzi
I
schemes?
last
Collapsed?
last positive answer was after the mother of Bashkim Fino
Oh, yeah. So he
Called
kept saying, no,
me.
I'm not going to do it.
called me and to ask me, please stay as a brother to Bashkim because I'm concerned about Berisha against Bashkim. And
Okay,
I
so,
promise, and you
so-
promise the mother of your friends, you need to fulfill your commitment.
Yes. So Bashkim Fino's mother asked my dad to.
She was crying.
She was crying on the phone, and she said, "Please go work with him because I don't want the president to somehow sort of get him involved into anything or hurt him in any way." And so she begged my dad to go work with her son, who was going to become prime minister. And that's what made him say yes, because he had promised her he would be like a brother to her son. And so then he accepted.
I mentioned this moment because I never been ambitious to be minister. I didn't create any small group in party or something like that.
He didn't want to go into politics.
Yeah, I like politics, but I don't have idea I will be prime minister, I will be minister. No. But I mentioned to my colleagues there, please let me think. If I take a decision, I would serve my country with my heart and all my knowledges.
So it's like, let me think about it, because if I do it, I'm going to go all in. But I need to really think about whether, I want to go in that direction. Because at the time he was, a banking expert, consulting expert, one of the top economists in the country,
3
but
years.
not necessarily wanting to go into politics or become a minister or prime minister.
Well, they say, I think then that means you're the right person for the job, because for these top positions, the right people are the ones who don't do it because they want to, but they feel like they need to do it as a duty to something bigger than themselves. You hear that a lot in the military and in other top places, where the leaders that you want are the ones who actually didn't want the job, but then they do it because they feel a purpose to do it.
Yeah. In 2002, I had been ambitious to go to study abroad of Albania because it didn't have this experience or opportunity before 1990s. I applied to a special program at Georgetown University, a program to invest to experts from East European countries. But at that time, Prime Minister Nano created a new government, and he invited me to be back as a Minister of Finance. And I thought, enough is enough, because the very difficult job in government is to be Minister of Finance. First, for the mission to provide fiscal sustainability in your country, to reduce deficit, to reduce the budget, to reduce the cost of them. Second, in the Ministry of Finance, part of which are the tax collector and custom service, you pay a public price for many accusations.
Because no one likes taxes.
And Prime Minister Nano insists, you'll be part of my government. And I told I have a ticket to go to Georgetown to start my program. He told me, you never told me that. And he insisted, and I created contact with Georgetown University and and person in the American embassy. I've been in this difficulty, to go or not to go. And they mentioned the first...
You reached out to someone at the Georgetown University?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I won the program for 1 year. Pay from
he got into the program.
State Department. And they told me, Arben, the first mission, this is a message for anyone who is watching this video, is to serve your country. And I told, I'm losing opportunity to go in Georgetown. And they told me, no, don't worry, we can postpone your program for 3 years.
But you never went back, if I can spoil it.
And I continue as a Minister of Economy, not Minister of Finance.
You said no to Minister of Finance.
No.
And then they put you as Minister of Economy.
It was a compromise with Prime Minister.
Okay, you're like, I don't want the bigger, better one. Just okay, but what is the difference between Minister of Finance and Minister of Economy?
It's a big difference. Minister of Finance are very strict people.
So you had done Minister of Finance before, up until that point, for how many years?
About 2 years during the deeply crisis, yes. And 1.5 years when I came for the second time. Because when I was agreed with Prime Minister to be Minister of Economy, After 1 year and 3 months, international finance institution as prime minister is good for Albania, Malaj, to be again minister of finance.
So, okay, so you were a minister of finance for 2 years during Ponzi schemes. Then you left, and then you're like, I just want to keep learning. He loves academia, so he applied to Georgetown University, got into a 1-year program to learn what? What were you going to learn there?
In Georgetown?
Yeah.
Was a special
program?
public policy. The best professors in Georgetown University was part of our program. Very focused program.
Yes.
And you mentioned what is
Difference between Minister of Economy and Finance.
What is the Ministry of Finance? I can share with you what the director of European department in IMF mentioned me during my first meeting in IMF in September 1997. And told me, Arben, you are young, but in IMF we have golden rules. The best minister of finance are them which any time say no from any kind of proposals to get the money for budget.
To get money for budget.
To get more money from budget.
The job of the Minister of Finance is, as the other ministers are asking you for the budget allocations, your job is to say no. Okay, so that's mostly like budget allocations. And then what's the Minister of Economy?
Minister of Economy, I think, is the best opportunity which help you to have a strategic vision or strategic analysis about not just how to manage the money, but how to create good promises for the future of your country.
So like jobs, or what kind of promise?
All structure reform.
Structure reform.
Free trade.
Free trade.
Business environment.
Okay, business environment. So the Minister of Finance manages the budget.
Yes.
And the Minister of Economy is thinking more strategically in terms of like labor,
everything,
free trade, everything else.
Yeah, science, technology, special regulatory institutions.
Is there an analogy within a corporation, what the Minister of Finance does versus Minister of Economy? What's the analogy within a corporation? So is Minister of Finance the chief financial officer, and then...
Yeah. Responsibility of Minister of Finance is to provide fiscal sustainability. Usually, based on my experience, all lines ministry, when we prepare the pre-budget, asking for 2 times higher than we have opportunities.
Everyone asks for twice as much as they should be asking for. So it's the Minister of Finance job to say no.
Not to say no, but to select how money can provide more results in economy. Because another gold rules of Ministry of Finance is that with low money to get higher results.
It's almost like thinking about investment. How do I distribute the money to different ministries? And how do I distribute the budget in a way where we have the highest return on investment?
Yeah.
Minister of Economy, is there a similar role in a corporation that does similar stuff?
The Ministry of Economy is crucial for the future of the country. For example, we signed during my mandate is 18 months about 31 free trade agreements.
Okay, with different countries.
Yeah, which create a very good opportunity to reduce the cost, because based on the World Trade Organization, we had obligation to reduce the customs fee, to reduce the cost of the goods and the service, and to provide the prosperity for the people.
Nice.
And in this context, it's more open-minded to be Minister of Economy.
Okay. You're being creative, you're doing agreements, you're doing alliances.
Negotiations.
So Minister of Economy was fun for you. So as you're going to Georgetown, you applied to this 1-year program, you got in, it was going to be, you had a scholarship from the U.S. government, and you're ready to go. And then the Prime Minister at the time used to be your professor. And may he rest in peace, he passed away a few months ago. But basically, he had been your professor and he was very supportive of you. You're about to go to Georgetown University for a 1-year program. And he calls you and he's like, come be my Minister of Finance. Again. Because you had been a Minister of Finance for 2 years during the Ponzi scheme. And you said, no, I'm going to Georgetown. And he said, you hadn't told me that. You said, I have a ticket ready. They have accepted me. I'm ready to go. And then you called Georgetown University and you're like, what do I do? And they said, you have to serve your country. That's a top priority. Now you're negotiating with your former professor, very supportive person, and current Prime Minister of Albania, which at the time Prime Minister was more important than President.
Yes, because
at the time. So
at
President
the same
used to
time
be-
was the chairman of my party.
Yes, he was also
had
the
power.
head of the party. So he had a lot of power. He was the main person of the country. So then he says, then you're negotiating with him. You're like, I don't want to be Minister of Finance. I want to be Minister of Economy if I'm going to come back to the government and work. And then you got that for about a year and a few months, a year and a half. And then was it IMF who told...
Different international finance institutions.
Yeah, different international financial institutions. They told the Prime Minister, look, we want him to be Minister of Finance.
To be back.
To go back. Okay.
And I need to negotiate again with the Prime Minister.
What were you negotiating now?
No, and I told, okay, I will be part of this proposal because I know from my experience to be Minister of Finance in the last 2 years of 8 years in mandate, you need to be deeply professional and to have a high public integrity. And I know Prime Minister need that, both of them, integrity and professional expertise. And I say, okay, but don't forget that if we win election for the third mandate, I never be minister.
So you were negotiating again. So the international institutions, they go to the Prime Minister. They're like, make him Minister of Finance because he did so well before and the country needs him. And then my dad is like, well, these are the last 2 years of your mandate as a party. If we get reelected, I'm not staying minister. Okay.
Yeah.
You really didn't want to be minister.
And you know what happened? We didn't win
You
third
didn't
mandate.
win the third mandate.
Prime Minister resigned as leader of party
Why did he resign? Because you didn't
because
win.
lost elections.
Okay.
And after some days, I had a call from him and told me, Arben, I need a coffee with you. Okay. And told me, I have idea you will be the good leader of Socialist Party.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. And I told him, I have a ticket. What kind of ticket do you have? Because when I became Minister of Finance again, one day, one person, Albania, who
Every
was,
time he called my dad had a ticket to somewhere.
He's like, I'm going to this thing. Why do you keep making me trying to do this?
as a good advisor, everyone need to have a plan B.
Yes, that's a great negotiation move. Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
And he told me, during this period, one good friend who was master in Harvard, Kennedy School of Government, called me and told, Arben, try to go to this website and to apply to come to Harvard University. And I'm told it's not possible about different issues and special English. And told me no one...
So my dad was a little insecure about his English, and someone told him, you should go to this program at Harvard Kennedy School, and he's like, my English is not good enough. I'm not going to get in, or they're not going to accept me.
And he told me, no one asks you about quality English. Everyone asking about your experience.
Yes, exactly.
I applied as a senior fellow, Center for Government and Business.
Yeah.
And I take this ticket.
Yeah, so you finally got to cash that ticket.
And the
Yeah.
Prime Minister told me, how is possible? You had been a minister and applying to go to Harvard? And I told it's different program. It's for ministers and leaders. And he told me, but it's good to be here. And I have very high respect for you didn't invest who will be replace you. In this context, Rama started to personalize himself as a leader of Socialist Party.
Current head of the Socialist Party had slowly started to make some moves to become head of the party, but the former person, Fatos Nana, we have deep respect for. He had talked to my dad about it. Why didn't you accept?
Many people ask me, friends and intellectuals for Albania, because now the country is in a difficult situation about democracy and about the style of Rama is leading Albania. And I'd like to mention something from the professor of Yale University about politics. He mentioned that if voters are losing their
If voters are losing faith,
faith that the voters can change system,
the voters can change the system.
their voters can't change system. Autocracy doesn't come with tanks.
So there's a Yale professor who has a famous quote, which is, if voters lose faith that their votes can change the system,
Can or cannot?
Can't.
Can't
basically
change.
they lose faith that their votes can do anything
matter,
about it,
yeah.
that matter, then autocracy does not need to arrive in tanks, which means autocracy has an easy way of
Occupy.
winning
Oh.
when people lose faith in their votes.
Yeah.
How is this relevant to what Nano said to you, your former professor? Do you regret not accepting to follow him?
Yes, but when friends ask me like you, I didn't accept it. This because first Nano didn't invest who will be.
So he hadn't
His leader.
mentored you. Is that what you
not
mean
just
by
for
that?
me. Some
But
others
he
of
didn't
Socialist
think
Party.
through a
He
succession
didn't
plan. What comes
promote
after
it.
me? Yeah.
Yes, this is one. Second, Rama was very aggressive as a politician with any ethics, just how to win. As a mayor of Tirana, he get access to international media supported from
Yeah.
Soros Foundation. He created criminal links with...
Okay, well, we're not going to go into politics, but do you
Okay.
regret not accepting Nano's offer to become the head of the party?
Yes.
You regret it?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. But at the time you said no because you didn't feel very supported.
It's not support. It's about ethics in politics. When friends from Harvard ask me, because people need to know that after the Harvard, I didn't have any permission in my political country, but I survived with high integrity
You didn't
and
have
dedication
any position
for my
waiting
country.
for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because don't believe that Harvard would help you to
Will
be
open doors in politics.
to be ready for
Politics.
leaders everywhere. Yeah.
Yes. Did you say no to his proposal to become head of party because you wanted to go to Harvard?
Not only for a Harvard, but when historical leader led the party, groups can fight each other.
Yes.
And I wasn't ready for this because party would be in opposition.
Turmoil.
Would be in opposition,
It would be
and
in
you
opposition.
need to be united. This was my philosophy, which is different other leaders. Yeah.
So when he asked you to become head of the party was going to be in opposition because it had just lost the elections, the third term. And so you didn't want to be the
Position,
leader of
no.
a party in opposition because there would be a lot of inner fighting.
And a lot of negative interferences from abroad.
Okay, got it.
So, and then at the time,
Wow,
then
what a
there
journey.
was another politician named Edi Rama who was
Yes.
very ambitious and ultimately became head of party. He's the current prime minister of Albania.
At the time, he was the mayor of Tirana, and it allowed him to gain a lot of popularity. I remember I was in high
Mass
school.
media,
Mass media,
business,
international media coverage and support. I was in high school when Edi Rama, who's right now prime minister and head of Socialist Party, when he was a mayor, I was in high school, and I remember he would sing songs with famous Albanian bands, and he was very popular with the young voters
yeah.
and all that. Yeah.
He made sure to have his Bill Clinton playing saxophone moments.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think
And that was very new
He'd
and
be a
impressive.
David.
Yeah, he plays some sort of drum.
Yeah.
But that was very unprecedented for Albanian politicians who up until that point were very serious, buttoned up. And he came in as like a fun, speaking to the youth voice with a new like hope. So it's hard to compete with that.
Yeah. So I want to rewind and recap
Yes.
a little bit because I feel
covered
like
so much.
we covered so much. So there were financial instruments that were ultimately Ponzi schemes that a majority of Albanians lost their savings. They vanished, all their money overnight. The country was in turmoil. There was civil unrest, and the government at the time, essentially your college roommate was selected to be prime minister, and his mother ultimately begged you to join the government as the minister of finance because you were someone that he could trust. So you did that for 2 years. Country was in turmoil, and you were able to steer the Albanian economy out of this financial crisis. You were asked again to be Minister of Finance. I do find it very funny how I feel like it's the reverse job application where
like,
you want to do something else, but they say, no, pause that, please do this, and you keep getting pulled into it. One thing I'm curious about, because when we published our first interview with you, and we also did a newsletter, it was we got the most responses from this newsletter, and I think a lot of people were very interested in this history of what Albania went through during this financial crisis. And I think especially a lot of our audience, they're Americans, they had no idea about this history.
You know, I have in Harvard the same history which President Trump had about Armenia and Albania. You know history?
No, what a story?
Between Armenia and Albania?
Because President Trump mentioned that I promoted and achieved peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia. But he mentioned between Azerbaijan and Albania.
So Trump confused Albania and Armenia?
No, it's something special because when I came in Harvard, I am very social man. I met many people, doesn't matter the status of them. And when I introduced myself, I am from Albania. Many of them mentioned me from Armenia.
Armenia, yeah. I get that a lot too.
And I asked my best friend in Harvard, Mark Fagan, and how is possible? My English is not fluent. But it's not possible. 80% doesn't understand me when I mention Albania and they mention
Armenia. Yeah.
And they mentioned that before the Kosovo War, no one knew Albanian in you.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Well, now with Dua Lipa and others famous, Amira Murati, the former CTO of OpenAI, they've put Albania on the map, and hopefully no one will confuse it for Armenia.
Yeah, but for people like President Trump, again, he will mention you are from Armenia.
It's still, even the POTUS today is confusing it. And so because we had so much interest in this, I would love to hear just your personal experience. So you have now been selected as Minister of Finance, a very high-profile position. You were pretty young, new to this world of politics. I would love to hear just how did you navigate being in this new world the job and ultimately, and of course, I mean, when you look back on history, you were very, very successful. So how did you think about, do I belong here? A lot of people might feel like they have imposter syndrome. I would love to hear your thinking as you were in this new role.
Yeah, the first I have a public profile and I have good contacts, but more important than others has been the language. Many people mention them when you explain something to us as a taxpayer, as others, we understand you 100%.
The communication.
Communication.
What was the highest role you had up until the point you became Minister of Finance the first time? The youngest director at a bank.
National Commercial Bank, branch in Vlora. After that, I worked 3 years with a program of EU, which was the first program to support small and medium enterprises. And they chose me to be general manager for 3 big regions in Albania together, Tirana, Durrës, Kavaja, which made more than 60% of GDP of Albania. When working this job, I know many businessmen who just started their business, and I offered them free service. Sometimes Monda criticized me
Monda is my mom.
It was very difficult financial situation, and my strategy was that they didn't get the money in early phase of their business. If they would be successful, just 10% of them to respect me.
So like a success fee.
Yeah.
So your question was, you're young, you were placed in one of the most difficult jobs in the country to clean up the Ponzi schemes as a Minister of Finance. I think what you were trying to ask is what gave you the confidence to do it and how did you navigate?
Yeah, and ultimately, the thing that I'm also most interested in, because a lot of our listeners and viewers are people who are thinking about their careers and how to progress in their career. We often have people, I've spoken to a lot of people who say, I don't want to go for this high position because I feel like my experience only makes sense here.
Yes.
I would love to hear, do you have any advice for people who are rising in their careers and how to have that confidence to succeed and to believe in themselves? Any thoughts around that? Because you've had that experience
And
yourself.
I want to jump in very quickly. I helped a client get a double promotion during negotiations. And she said, I'm not sure about this. So even though the company was happy to give her 2 levels up, she was nervous to take that role.
I have the answer for your friends about that. And I'm writing the book for leadership, which is my obligation to people of my country and especially for young generation. And one of the advice is that the elevator for career doesn't work. Get the stairs one by one.
So look at the next step. How do you succeed there? From there, then there may be other options that open up. But
what was more useful for my country was my professional advantage, which built step by step. In this context, I have some advantages compared with others. Some colleagues have been very well to academic area, but not how to manage a crisis. Some are fluent in communication, but doesn't have the knowledge. And I like to mention that friend of mine who worked in IMF had been classmate. After the first experience with the conclusion was that it's not easy. It's difficult to negotiate with Arben, but if you achieve a negotiations result,
But if you agree on something, he will do it.
he can fulfill them.
So I think the answer to your question, according to my dad, is it wasn't that big of a jump from where he was to becoming Minister of Finance because he had proven himself in various roles, high visibility roles. He had excellent communication with the public, and he had proven himself under difficult situations in his career.
He had about 11 years experience
You had
before to
11
be
years.
Minister of Finance.
Experience, yes. So it wasn't as big of a jump as it may seem. So from what I'm hearing from this is that he was already confident that he could do it. And then how did you navigate it? You had never been Minister of Finance before. Like how?
Yeah, the first is to create a positive synergy with your team.
Okay.
And I take some concrete cases how to build this confidence to them. The first day when I start a new job, I send email to them. Thank you very much. You'll be part of my success and I will respect you.
There was email in 1997?
Yes, in Albania. And I was very careful about one of them have health problems.
Health problems?
Yes.
You were worried that one of them had health problems?
When my cabinet mentioned me, this person in ministry doesn't matter in each level he is, I supported them in different way. One way was to go abroad of Albania, but to get the visa in 1997, embassies approved the visa only when minister asked them. And I do that anytime just to create solidarity with them.
What my dad is saying is he was very caring towards his cabinet and his team. If they ever had health issues and they needed to leave the country to get better health care, they needed visas. And at the time in 1997, the embassies needed someone high up, in this case the minister, to approve that you would travel outside of the country. And my dad was always very supportive.
And
they cared about their health, their well-being, their families.
And more productive was the message, which I mentioned in my first message to them. Everyone in ministry who is ambitious to go to study abroad and can apply and find opportunity, you will have my support. First to go there, and that we signed agreement, they will be in the same position, will come back.
Okay. So he also came up with this program where if anyone would get into an educational program abroad, my dad was very supportive, not only sort of maybe providing letters of reference or things like that, but also that he would guarantee that they would have their job back when they would come back.
And I asked them, don't go through your chiefs in your departments. Go directly to my cabinet, because sometimes chief of department doesn't like them to be on master programs because they were afraid he will be replaced them.
Yeah. So my dad said, don't go through other people, just come straight through my office, just in case other people are not supportive and they feel more competitive, they're worried that you'll steal their job. I will support you to go abroad.
And last but not least, I organized many events in the ministry, especially for the birthdays, or Day of the Children, Day of the Mothers.
So a lot of
and,
community building.
Christmas.
Maybe that's where I get it.
Yeah.
And this created very good relation, because social profile is very important element. If you doesn't have a good social profile in your heart and perception of public, you never will be a good negotiator.
When you say social profile, you mean people need to
You as
perceive
being.
you as kind, as you caring about them and caring about community building, and that will really help. It's a necessary element in negotiation. Can you give us a couple examples of negotiations that you've done, and who was negotiating? What were they negotiating? What helped in a successful negotiation, or what are your tips for each of them?
Yeah, let's start from negotiation to IMF in 1997
Okay,
between me as a Minister of Finance and them to prepare recovery program for Albania.
IMF is the International Monetary Fund.
Fund.
Great. This is part 3. We'll pause here and continue on the next episode. Stay tuned.